Episode 13 of the Denoise podcast. We're the Blender heads at CG Cookie, here to discuss all things pertaining to computer graphics and its premier open source software, Blender. In this episode, we're chatting with Colin Levy, who famously directed the open movie Sintel back in 2010, which led to his dream animation job at Pixar. There he worked on Monsters University, Inside Out, Finding Dory, and more. Colin then left Pixar to develop his own original sci-fi live-action series called Skywatch, which began with a short film that went viral with a surprise cameo from Jude Law. Skywatch has since been stuck in development limbo for years. In many ways, Colin Levy has lived out the dream so many of us in the Blender community aspire to, yet he's also very familiar with the dark side of that dream, fraught with challenge, burnout, and creative heartbreak. Though this conversation can get heavy, mental health in our industry is not talked about enough, and I'm grateful for Colin taking us there. All right, Colin, it's an honor for one because you're etched, permanently in the pantheon of Blender. So we all know you here. We are at BCON LA, by the way, for context. And it's just, it's a wild experience being across the table in the basement with you and Wolf Mother poster on the wall.
Oh, yes.
But I wanted to make kind of an interesting connection. I think I owe you some gratitude for my transition into Blender.
Oh, really?
Which I didn't realize until I was researching for this conversation. I'd met you once briefly at 2013 SIGGRAPH. And the reason I wanted to make that connection is I had just left Make Visual. No. It had been a little while since I'd left Make Visual and realized you were there. And so when I go back
about this.
Yeah, so when I go back to my 5 months there, it was short, all things considered. But I remember pretty early on that one day at lunch, and it wasn't a Blender place. So like one day at lunch, everybody gathers around a computer to watch their buddy Colin's Cintel premiere. And I was like, okay, what is this Blender situation? I mean, I've heard of it, but it's the free one. And then everyone's kind of like, has that connection to you of like rooting for you. And
so cool.
I'm seeing like, wait, this is Blender? This thing we're watching? Like this short is better than I expected. And so when I look at my timeline, because from that point for the next year or so, it was like steadily right to Blender, right? That became what I adopted, and I haven't used anything else since. And I think that seeing that short was like, this is legit. Right, it achieves that legit point that, I can use this. This is worth transitioning to. So anyway, I do think that moment is definitely memorable. And looking back, yeah, I owe him some gratitude for that.
That's awesome.
Wow.
You were at Make in 2010 then?
2010 to the very beginning of 2011.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. I only interned there for a summer, but it was the year before. Yeah, it was just 3 months or something, but it was an amazing experience.
Yeah, well, they were fans. I was impressed that they all gathered around. And
are you still in touch with Andrew Chesworth?
I follow him.
Okay,
and so we haven't kept in touch or worked together or anything, but like we were kind of buddies when we were there.
Yeah. It's been amazing to watch his career flourish.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was there like dreaming of working at Pixar, and he was there dreaming of working at Disney, and then fast forward 5 years, he was at Disney, I was at Pixar, and
unbelievable.
Yeah, he's a really inspiring filmmaker.
Yeah, man. Oh my goodness. So anyway, I thought that was a fun little connection that we shared. Right now, we are at BCON LA, and you are about to go on in a couple hours. So how you feeling about your presentation coming up?
I'm nervous.
Colin is nervous?
Public speaking is not my forte.
Okay.
Oh man. I mean, I know it's going to be fine, and I've done it before, but I'm never as prepared as I want to be. I would love to have rehearsed more, and I sent in my slides before, I was late to turn in my slides, and I would love to be able to make some tweaks, but that's not, the visuals are locked in, so I'm just going to roll with it and try to shed my perfectionism, and, I think people like it. We'll find out. Hopefully I can just get in the zone and not get freaked out.
Yeah, everyone's going to love it. I mean, you could get up there and talk about your favorite recipes and people are going to
I don't know about that.
As long as they're Blender recipes,
right.
I guess. Yeah. So shedding perfection, that's an interesting, that almost sounds like a posture of life, right? Tell me about that, and where does the perfectionism go back to?
Actually, yeah, it's definitely a goal right now in my life to just be a little bit messier, be a little bit looser, be okay just being good enough rather than, I've been working on Skywatch is a passion project that I've been working on for a decade, and I put so many eggs in one basket, and it took me 6+ years to put this short together. And that timeline is a reflection, I think, of my perfectionism. I just needed it to be that great. And I'm now 36, just turned 36.
Wow.
My life is, time, is marching on. And I think in so many ways in my life, my perfectionism has held me back more than it's served me.
Wow.
So yeah, I think this talk is a great example of an opportunity to loosen up a little bit and just be okay being good enough, doing my part, preparing as best I can, but also, being a little more right-sized about my expectations for myself. I think the perfectionism goes back to, my dad started teaching me violin at the age of 4, and this is maybe a narrative I've crafted for myself, but I really do think that daily practice violin taught me a lot of great things, including discipline and learning skills over time, but it also kind of, for me, equated love with success, love with performance. And so my ability to perform or create or be successful in terms of skills is the thing that makes me valuable. And so if I can't show up perfect here or there, I'm worthless, It's led to a lot of imposter syndrome in my life. Yeah, just really high standards for myself. I definitely struggle being kind to myself when I do make mistakes. So it's something I'm working on. Yeah.
And so even making it to Pixar, landing a successful series pitch, did you expect that to be the arrival? That I'm valuable because this is success.
It never actually feels like that. Yeah, every threshold just leads, I guess, to the next. But it actually feels somehow progressive, like this issue in my life where every threshold of success has led to deeper insecurity about whether or not, I'm worthy of the opportunity.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think particularly with the Skywatch, it catapulted me into, a category. I've broken into Hollywood. Now I could have a actual show on a streamer. I cannot fuck this up.
Oh, wow.
And the pressure is just immense. And fundamentally, especially at that time, I didn't feel worthy. I felt like I had tricked people into give me this chance. I've been working hard on this illusion, of this short and this feature script, but no one really read the feature. And I pitched it in the room, every ounce of my will was focused on the release of Skywatch and the pitch. And I had succeeded in jumping through this hoop, but now I've got to deliver, and I don't know if I'm capable. This was at least the narratives going through my mind.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. And the successful pitch, how long ago was that?
2019. So over 4 years.
Yeah. Whoa, man. Is there an update? Because I did listen to the Andrew Price podcast, and I do want to say first, because I so valued that first part of the podcast where you guys went deep into the negative side of passion and obsession and this perfectionism theme.
Yeah, some of this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe it's not what Blender people are searching for Google in or looking into Google for, but man, it's clear that there's a deficiency in this understanding within this community. So I'm very glad you went there, and just wanted to affirm you for doing that. So, but
it's hard for me to not talk about these things because it's so real in my life right now.
There's a funny segue. I wanted to say something else about something you mentioned, but there was a great segue that you made into, let's talk about Blender features. Yeah. And that's what we should be interested in and talking about, Blender features. Right. Anyway, I thought that was great. But I'm going to come back to that with the question. So the update on Skywatch.
Yeah, so Skywatch, in Hollywood, no project ever truly dies. And it's actually a very confusing phenomenon because it's leading me to a point where I have a decision to make about when to let go versus where to double down or where to, keep holding on. So with Skywatch, we sold it to a streamer, Peacock. It was set up with UCP, Universal Content Productions, which is their studio. We had it set up with Fuzzy Door, which is a production company, Seth MacFarlane's production company. these three entities were attached, and usually there is a production company, a studio, and a network for any television project. Usually you attach one and then you pitch it to the next, and they attach themselves, and then you pitch.
Wow.
And it's a whole process, and I don't really fully understand what typically happens, but we kind of had a stacked deck, attached to showrunner. We've been working development on writing and rewriting the pilot. We blew it up. We reconfigured things. We actually got closer to the DNA of the short. Like 2 years in, we kind of scrapped this further afield version to kind of, capture some of that energy from what we'd already made, which people fell in love with. And anyway, there's so many factors beyond our control. Executive change-ups, COVID, the writers' strikes. And essentially, after the strikes in the fall of this past year, 2023, all entities dropped the project. So Skywatch this version of it is dead. This version of it that I've been working on for 4 years is no more. I've learned a whole lot from this process, especially on a personal level, letting go of control because I don't have it.
Which you imagine the job of direction is having control over this project, right?
Yeah.
It's the whole job, but now you've realized I don't.
Yeah. It's a really universal issue, I think, for creators, particularly green newbies to the industry. You are hired for your vision, but you got to really know how to collaborate and work within the structures of television in this case.
Okay.
And so a lot of learning there, a lot of jumping through hoops, receiving notes, and navigating. Yeah, which I don't think I did successfully. And I do think that my imposter syndrome helped me self-sabotage a little bit. I can't take full ownership for things falling apart, but I do think that if I had shown up a little bit more, in my, I'll just say, full powers as a creative, maybe things would be different.
Yeah.
So a lot of learning, like I said. Just to catch you up, though, and tie it up with a bow, the project is now in turnaround, which is a term I don't really know. Basically, a lot of projects, do die on the vine at a particular place, but also often, not that often, you can take something that's been developed at one place and set it up somewhere else.
Okay.
It does happen. So in this case, we have the ability to shop around the pilot script that I've been writing to other studios, networks, production companies.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's a lien attached to the property. So if we pitched it to Disney or Apple or Netflix, they would have to pay Peacock and UCP for the development work that they have already invested in, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's a real
weird.
Yeah, it's a real disincentive for anyone to buy it. But at the same time, this is an expensive show. It's probably a $50 million minimum first season. And so compared to that, it's a drop in the bucket. If there was a network out there that was serious about producing it, that's kind of what it would take, is almost a decision like, we are going to make this, and so it's worth this small investment to acquire the IP from this other network.
Oh my goodness. I just have but a fraction of I think the dream of making films or series. I share that with you, but not to your level. But I can just imagine how painful that would be to put as much time and love into this.
It's been a decade. Yeah.
Yeah. And to see it just leave your hands and then treated like a commodity, basically.
Yeah. It's interesting because I do think that the commercial mandate can be very useful. If something is going to be popular or entertaining, it's likely to be commercially viable. So at the end of the day, I hope that this process can forge something that is truly great, And I'm actually not convinced that the version that we developed at Peacock was good enough. But I am a perfectionist, and I don't know if it would ever have gotten there. And I was terrified. It's like, oh my God, if this is actually getting made, I want it to be great. And I feel really good about the pilot, but the full season is, man, this is really hard. Writing is freaking hard. And I don't have, just don't have experience. I have a lot more hours working in Blender than I do working in final draft.
Okay, that makes sense. You made a comment about direction and your perfectionism or imposter syndrome, self-sabotaging. Do you think you're too nice of a guy? Because I think you're a very nice guy. You're socially aware. And part of being nice is like doubting yourself. Because if you doubt yourself and your presuppositions, then it leaves room for empathy to whoever you're talking to.
Yeah, right.
But in a directorial position, it's like, that's where it crashes and burn, or it gets taken away and you lose your vision.
That's interesting. I mean, I struggle with boundary setting. I am definitely a people pleaser. I definitely want to be liked in every scenario. And being nice is a tool to be liked for sure. I think when the rubber meets the road in directing scenarios, I think I'm pretty good at putting the project first. Okay. And so I'll never just be nice for the sake of it, if it's actually not right for the project, I need to make a change, and feelings come second. But I still want to be diplomatic. And I think, though, in the sort of political process of development, these same issues do come into play. And I am less, I think just through sheer lack of experience, I kind of want to do what's expected of me rather than do what I think, because I don't know. I've never made a show before. So maybe I'll be less quote unquote nice next time around, just because I've gone through this process once and I've seen things fall apart. And so already I think there's some takeaways there.
Yeah. Whoa, man. Well, okay, so this version of the project is dead. It's possible that it could be picked up by another place if you pay the lien, and that could happen. Do you ever, because you're close, or you're friends with Ian Huber, right? Mm-hmm. And like, I look at his success and what he's been able to do.
Oh my God, I know.
And like,
I ask myself this question all the time.
Can you do without the Hollywood system? And
it's a great question. And just thinking about that makes me exhausted.
Understandably.
I mean, for 6 of the 10 years that I've been working on Skywatch, I was in production on my own version of this, right? It's a short, right? And I think there's ways. I'm also, man, the Blender Conference is so inspiring. I'm definitely being energized right now.
Ooh, good.
By these presentations, including yours. And
means a lot.
Yeah. Thanks. The idea of using the tools that I know how to use with intent, with collaborators who I'm already friends with. Like, what could be better? And it's very interesting because I've had a foot in this community.
Foot.
Like, I'm not doing the Ian Hubert thing. I don't have a Patreon. I don't have projects that are ongoing. I'm in a whole writing, And so I've made a conscious choice not to do that. And I do question whether or not I'm just swimming upstream for no reason. For me, the thing is sustainability. Every project that I put together is its own gargantuan effort. Right. And there's no translation. There's no momentum from one project to the next. Each one is like climbing a mountain. And then you're kind of at square one again. Yeah. And so in, I guess, the Hollywood system, or when I don't know, I would just love to be in a situation where I'm not also producing. You know what I mean? Where I can focus on the creative, where there's the resources. Some decision maker out there has said, we trust you. We approve this creative material, and now have fun in this playground. And yes, I will have to collaborate and answer to them and et cetera, et cetera. But I guess I'm yearning for this bigger sandbox that may not ever be available to me. And maybe that's what I'm going to learn, because just to say it, I love working on short films. I love working in Blender. I love the Blender Animation Studio and the projects I've been lucky enough to be a part of there and this community. So I don't know. I am very inspired by Ian. I'm also, I feel like he has more talent in his pinky.
Don't let this imposter syndrome come in here.
I haven't been, it's just like in terms of level of output, I'm just slow. I'm slow. And that's a problem. Okay. I mean, when it comes to your collabs that you talked about in your presentation, I really struggle with the managerial side, with the kickoff portion. It's like there's a lot of work just in working with others when you don't have necessarily production apparatus. Like, at Pixar, it was very cool to witness like the prod staff side of things, where you've got underneath the producer, you've got managers and coordinators that are working with every department to synchronize schedules, calendars, like deadlines.
It's a huge effort.
And like, it seems like probably for those collabs, that fell mostly to you. Is that the case?
It did. I say direct, but this you're certainly casting a vision, to a lesser degree, but it was so much management, so much producing. Usually it can balance out because on the backhoe, I did the whole back arm, right? Yeah. It's like a fifth of it or something. So that helps in the producing. But with the latest one, it was way more management and everyone else is doing stuff, which is how it should be, but I'm missing out. Like I never just want to produce. Yeah. I want to always be able to
create. The balance is really tricky. It's like, okay, first, I do enjoy doing the work, the nitty gritty. I do enjoy it, but it's not scalable, or I can't make the projects at the level that I'd love to, Yeah. And so then it becomes a question of, well, how do you make it happen? I mean, there's a reason why Ian is kind of an incredible one-man band, and that's an oversimplification. He does have his crew, but like it becomes a production problem. Production itself is very challenging, and coordinating any two artists. Yeah. I have found even with Skywatch that I spent more time on the gathering of files and the kickoff materials and the Zoom calls to kick off an artist, and then when it comes back, the notes and the revisions I'm asking for and the management of that personality and checking in with them, like in the amount of time and effort it took to do that, I probably could have done it myself and it would have been more fun. I sort of feel like Ian might be in that boat where he's just so good and he has such a specific vision, for example.
Yes.
But then that locks you into a certain cadence or way of working. I would love to scale up, and it's a tricky thing.
It's a very good point. That's a very good point. Yeah, I guess when I was talking to you, there's never been a better time, I would say, to be successful as a creative outside the traditional systems. And when I hear just how much work you put in to the short and then the series, right, like a decade, like you say, it's hard not to think like, I wonder if that decade was spent on like a Patreon or something. You can't go back. But totally. You're also only 36. I know you say 36, like I'm 36. And I feel that way at 35, but like we got some time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know if you thought about that.
No, it's a good point. I mean, I literally all the time. I've been working full time the last couple of years at a production company. I was a creative director, and I really feel at this point that the 9-to-5 life just isn't for me, and I don't know how to support myself. So I've kind of gone through this. Like when I worked at Pixar, I was saving up so that I could do my passion project, like quit, do my passion project. Then I ran out of money, and I got another 9-to-5. Yeah, and like I feel like this cycle of feast and famine, in terms of both time and money, it's like I will have no creative energy left when I'm in a 9-to-5, but I'm saving up for this period that I'm now in, where I can focus on my personal stuff. Right. Anyway, doesn't work for me. Maybe freelancing is the solution, but Patreon model, I really have to have something to offer, and I don't feel like I do. But I'm so grateful for. Honestly, the Blender community has opened up so much for me, and I think that probably the majority of my Kickstarter backers for Skywatch came from the Blender community. Oh, wow. And I would love to just be able to go and make my work, but I also feel like the work itself is not enough. And so Ian is so generous in terms of just the learnings and the assets, everything he releases, his output is insane.
Yeah.
And so it's not just Dynamo, his episodes, it's all this making up material, and I'm just not built like him. I want to do a Patreon, and I also feel like I'm not going to be good at it. I'm still literally sending out rewards for my 2017 Kickstarter.
I just talked to Matthew. I think he met you yesterday, and you said sorry for that it took 7 years, and he was like, not a problem with me.
Yeah, he got this concept art poster like 7 years after. Oh my God, it's so shameful. If you're listening to this and you backed the Kickstarter and you haven't gotten your Kickstarter rewards, please email me. I'm almost through.
Have you received anyone that's upset about it?
No. But I mean, at this point, I'm sending it out more for myself because I've been feeling this burden for 7 years. And I know no one cares. No one wants these posters. They're just going to end up in the trash. But I made them and I'm sending them if it's the last thing I do because, yeah, I want to be someone who fulfills his promises.
That's admirable. And I completely affirm that. I do not affirm this. They're going in the trash nonsense.
Well, who's going to hang these? I don't know. Yeah. I mean, not everyone. It's true. Yeah. But I have a corner in my closet with a bunch of rolled up posters. That's where we go.
Oh, man, you've got a lot of humility. And I find that is consistent with every great artist I've personally known and communicated with. So take that for what you will.
All right. Appreciate it.
I did want to circle back around to, it might be hard given how you've positioned yourself in like saying you're slow and stuff. You were very self-detrimental with your Blender skills, but I think everyone, including me, looks at you as being very successful with what you've done with Blender, like the literal projects, but also your rise into the community, directing Sintel, Agent 327, or is it 237?
Yeah, 327.
Okay.
I always mix it up myself.
And I was imagining, like, what if I could get you and Ian in the same conversation? And I was going to ask both of you, I feel like I have an idea of like what your superpower is. Like what makes you different from every other aspiring filmmaker? I mean, who doesn't get into Blender because they have some sort of aspiration to make Star Wars fan film or whatever? Like, why have you been able to do it? And is it fair to say that Blender has always only been the means to the end? Mm-hmm. Blender never was the end itself for you guys.
Yeah, it's a tool, but a freaking incredible one and a fun one that it's so empowering, you know? We should totally grab Ian and get him on this other mic because I would love to hear his answer to this question.
It's hard because you probably don't feel like you have the superpower.
Well, let me think on this for a second because every character defect has its asset also on the flip side of it. My perfectionism holds me back in a lot of ways, but it's also why I've gotten good at some things. So having high standards or just never being satisfied with my work is in one sense a flaw, but also a superpower. I was very lucky growing up. It's very interesting. Like I was not a social kid. I was pretty scared of like, I was just socially anxious and school was very stressful for social reasons. And my projects became a little bit of an escape. So coming home and losing myself learning software or After Effects or Blender and bringing stories to life at, the age of 15, that became my safe refuge from the intolerable intensity of life. And so there's a flaw there, but there's also a superpower.
Yeah.
And I think I've done a pretty good job of sort of soaking in lessons, being able to be discerning about, oh, I really love this scene in, Monsters, Inc. Or Minority Report or Iron Giant. And looking at my work and seeing how it doesn't measure up and looking at why, and what are they doing with camera or what are they doing with, like breaking down the things I see into creative decisions that are being made. I love the puzzle of that. Is trying to reverse engineer what went into the creation of something. Yeah. I used to do a lot of just frame by framing through moments in movies that I love, just to absorb it in a audio-free, slow motion environment, so I can just witness and process slowly what's going on. Game cinematics, movie trailers, all the rest. Right. So I don't know. Yeah, I've loved soaking stuff up like that. I think I have a lot of tenacity. That's a superpower. So being able to see a project through. It does take 6 years, 7 years. Like that's really hard to do, without giving up. Right.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I think there, maybe your point is bigger than mine. Mine's pretty small, but I think there's a lot of focus on Blender as the end. Yep. And that's almost unfair to Blender itself. Like Blender is built for a purpose. Someone told me one time, or introduced me to the world of workshop porn. So these are people who have wood shops that are pristinely kept, fully decked out. Every tool you can imagine, every chisel, every drill bit. Yes. And it's like clean. And they just...
And what are they making?
What are they making?
Right. What are they doing with it? This is actually a very, very common trap, and I almost fell into it myself, for sure. And it exists for sure in the 3D animation space, but also particularly on the live action side of things, you can get very gear oriented, like camera gear. I used to be very much about, well, what was this shot on?
Right.
What camera did they use?
Right.
That's just a tool, but it's very easy to go down that rabbit hole and start spending thousands upon thousands of dollars to put together the perfect rig that could have the capacity to be, oh, it's got this, high frame rate options for super slow-mo and, this and that. That's a trap for sure. So when I was 15, 16, it's so funny. Who was it? Jonathan? You mentioned Blender Wars.
That old website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was actually my introduction to Blender as well. And there was a Star Wars fan film forum that was really my introduction to the fact that as a nobody, but with a digital camera, I could make a movie. There was a guy on that forum. A lot of people were doing visual effects tests. That's what we called it, VFX tests. And I did a bunch of these too. It was really, really fun. It's like put a spaceship in your backyard or do a little lightsaber battle or whatever. And I noticed that everyone had work that looked pretty much the same, and you could look at it technically and applaud the effort and the achievement. But there was this one guy, Ryan Weber, who always put a little narrative in there, put a little story. It's still a visual effects test, but there was a gag, there was a punchline, there was a little something extra.
Yeah.
And suddenly the effect became purposeful, and it delivered an emotional experience that was just orders of magnitude beyond, and it was the same amount of work. This, on a visual effects standpoint, he did the exact same thing, but now I'm receiving it completely differently.
Right.
And I think that I really took that to heart. I was so inspired by Ryan, because then it raised my own bar. Okay, I'm not going to put, even though I'm excited about achieving this technical exercise or whatever, and I do want to do that, I owe it to myself to wrap a story around it and also try to become the best storyteller that I can. Maybe that's a superpower that I've been trying to intentionally develop. I don't want to just be a good visual storyteller or whatever, a visual executioner.
Yes. Yes.
Technician or artist. I do want to be a storyteller, and I want to put the spectacle to service.
I think that's so good. Even if not everyone wants to go your direction. I remember Adam Savage would mention, going back over his greeblies added to like the props that he would make, the story to why you put certain stains in certain places. Will anyone ever notice that? No. But I'm almost to the point where it's like, how could you make a decision otherwise without some sort of narrative driving this? There's no base to make a decision. So I completely affirm that. And if your average Blender person is listening, just a little bit of that, like you said, wrapping it around, giving purpose. I think that is a secret sauce or superpower. Even if you want to get in and just model all the time at a studio or whatever, if you're able to inject a little bit of that, you're going to have something over the other guy.
Absolutely. I 100% co-sign. And it actually makes me think of my experience on Sintel. Going into that project, I actually didn't know what the story was. And there was a really contentious period of time before we got into production where we were figuring out what Cintel was going to be. It was the Durnian open movie project. It was supposed to be more of a technical showcase with crowds and dragons, some fantasy thing, but like the mantra at the time was no story, maximum impact. And I could work as an artist on anything. But as a director, I have to have, going back to your point, it's hard to know how to make decisions unless I have a reason to make the decisions. I'm not going to arbitrarily, I don't have, as a director, maybe I don't have preferences. I am the arbiter of a particular story to dictate what those decisions are, because every decision should strengthen the foundation of the story that we're telling. It's like the clothesline that everything else hangs on. So I was kind of in this interesting place where I found myself sort of fighting to rework this narrative or actually give it something.
Yeah.
Because otherwise I just didn't know how to direct. How do I direct without a story? Yeah, I think there's a real lesson there, and something as tiny as a greeble on a spaceship has a direct relationship to the universe, to the world, to the story that you're telling, to the characters who are driving that ship. Like everything interconnects in a logical way or an emotional way, and it's that's part of the beauty of storytelling and filmmaking for me. I generally feel like there's a right choice for every decision.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's, maybe
Right
not
or
so
purposeful?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Right might be too black and white.
Okay.
But especially like with where to place the camera, I usually feel like there's a right answer here. I just need to find it.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. So I might have heard rumblings about this contentious period on Sintel. Was it you and Ton at odds?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, big time. Oh,
Okay.
my gosh. So stressful. And, Ton is this titan. I actually, literally this week, because I'm putting together this presentation, I was going through old files and stuff, and I found a video of me talking to my webcam to send this video file to Ton about the project. This is before I even moved to Amsterdam.
Oh, man.
And I was reviewing the script that Martin Ludovic wrote for Cintel, and it was insane to watch it back and to see how, man, I was proud of myself. Like this was 15 years ago. I was like a puny little 20-year-old, and I was trying to be diplomatic, but I was pretty firm about I didn't understand why any of these decisions. They felt so random. It didn't feel careful or like there was thought put into it. And yeah, that video, I think, laid the groundwork for the discussion that was to follow, that ultimately led us to hire Esther Wuda, who came in initially as a script doctor and then became the screenwriter who I collaborated with to put together the story for Sintel.
Whoa. So we can maybe throw out the whole "you're too nice" thing. Because you're doing the balance. You're being diplomatic. I think you seem very socially mature in knowing that there's the value in diplomacy, but you're not stepping down when it does not make sense.
It's funny, but when I feel like I'm in service to a story or to a project, yeah, maybe so. Maybe I can, make the right calls.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then by hiring Esther, does that mean your point was received and edified?
Yeah. I mean, this is the most stressful professional experience of my life for sure. But to his credit, Ton became such a cheerleader and such a incredible supporter. And, we really duked it out. But once a decision was made, he rallied behind it 100%. There were so many challenging and embarrassing, humiliating experiences I had, including pitching to the Dutch Film Fund, where it was him and me in this room, where hundreds of thousands of dollars hung in the balance of this pitch. And as opposed to the presentation I'm about to give in 1 hour, I bombed.
Really?
Maybe
right
it'll
beside
happen-
Ton?
Oh my God, yes. Unbelievable. It still haunts me to this day. And I would have literally kicked me off the project and said, fly home. But I'm still so embarrassed. But he came to my rescue in that moment. He took over the pitch. He won the day. He got, ultimately the grant came through, thank goodness. And he didn't lose faith in me and my vision. I mean, Ton, especially on those early projects, the roles were very, very muddy. Okay. So Ton is the executive producer, whatever, is also kind of directing over your shoulder.
Yeah.
And also, especially on Cintel, there was a lot of debate over a structured hierarchy at all. It's like we are all equal artists, so we should all be able to put together our, he wouldn't call it a free-for-all, but this is how it felt.
Okay.
And at the end of the day, it's a little incompatible with quality.
Yeah. Okay.
With consistency, with a unity of a vision. If everyone's making decisions from a story perspective, if everyone can get in the headspace of directing, maybe it's possible, but not everyone has that skill set. And it ended up being a very prickly situation in a couple of moments. And actually, some of these conversations recurred on Agent 327 about 6 years later. Yeah.
Okay.
The interesting difference there was that I was just coming from Pixar, and so I had a little bit more weight to throw around.
Oh, this is great, man. We all think the world of Ton. I just think it's so interesting that two figureheads are have that contention. And
I love Ton. And I'm so grateful to him. And I think actually the best professional opportunities I've ever gotten are because of his faith in me. So amazing things I think have come from this particular collaboration.
Wow. I don't want to make you spend any time in that embarrassing moment, but was it can I ask just, was it, if I'm
Yeah.
imagining what's an embarrassing thing for me in that situation, it's like, if I feel like this guy doesn't like what I'm pitching and I reach a point where it's like, I write this guy off and kind of blow up a little bit at it. Was that a situation, or do you feel like the pitch was just underwhelming?
Oh, it was even worse than that, where I kind of opened my mouth and couldn't speak. Everyone was speaking Dutch, and then they switched to English, and then I was asked, "What is your vision?" And
Oh my goodness.
I stammered and I just couldn't.
Oh, Colin.
The amount of suddenly all eyeballs are on me. It's funny because Ton literally prepped me with the question, "What is your vision?" And I thought it was just the dumbest question.
Yeah.
Who would ask, "What is your vision?" And those are the words that I was asked. What is your vision? And I think I stammered something about doing justice to the script, which is a beautiful story I believe in.
Yeah.
But that's about all I could get out. And then I later, once the conversation was in English and was being had, and it was a little bit more back and forth, and Ton had taken over the pitch and was showing all this concept art and being very enthusiastic. And then I could jump in and riff a little bit with him. So by the end, I was more comfortable, but I just biking home following Ton to the studio. I was like looking at the ground under my bike wheels, like in Amsterdam, picturing that I would be on a flight back.
I hope you don't mind sharing that, but I think that is so relatable in that situation.
Oh man.
I've never been to Amsterdam, never been to the Blender conference. A little bit in part, some of it's just the scheduling's not worked out for me, but like a little bit feeling the cultural difference or the language barrier. And for you to say that, it's like, I can be right there. Like just where the words, like all of a sudden they're gone. Wow, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you've given talks before at Blender conferences, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's always hard.
I think they go well though, from what I've seen.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's really interesting to see, this mix of speakers, the content, the experience. It's such a welcoming, this community is awesome and about as close to a non-judgmental group that you could ask for. A lot of friendly faces in the audience. People are rooting for you, So, yeah, some people are more natural at it. I'm like a control freak. So I'd love to have the whole thing figured out exactly what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. And I don't have that this time. So.
Yeah. Man, well, we probably need to wrap up because you got to get ready. But the best of luck. I say that because I hope it makes you feel good, but you're going to do great and we're going to love it. And I want to say to you that I feel like what you are bringing, this is our first like real conversation too. But what I've seen in your other conversations, what you bring to Blender that is lacking is like wisdom, which is funny for a software-based community, but that's what we need more of that. We need more of that. The software is great. And I don't mean to, I hope no one takes this as like, I live and breathe Blender, right? It's my tool, but again, I guess it's a disservice to the tool if that's all you focus on. And so you're bringing real life experience into the conversation from people who look up to you and respect you and follow in your shoes, from dreams of filmmaking. And so to go through what you've gone, a lot of pain, I just can't imagine what Skywatch feels like to you as, I'm a father. You're not a father. Okay. So a baby, of your ambition, and for where it's at right now, that is extremely hard, but we get to benefit because you're willing to share some very deep things. So
Thanks.
Thank you for doing that.
Well, it's such a privilege to have had the chance to experience these failures.
That's perspective.
Yeah, just so grateful to just be able to live out these experiences, to have and learn from, getting to work at the Blender Animation Studio. Like, what a dream, and a real privilege. And for any opportunity, there's thousands of people equally as talented or deserving.
Yeah.
So it's a little frustrating to be in Hollywood trying to knock on the door and say, "Hey, let me in," which has kind of been my experience. But it is incredibly competitive. It's very difficult to really step through that threshold. So I'm not sure what the future holds there, but I guess I'm trying to be a little less result oriented at this point and just sort of go with the flow of what this life has in store for me professionally. I think that there's a lot that I could contribute, but I've also had more than my share of like incredible opportunity. And for a while I was making Skywatch, I was just like driving in traffic and I was like, it's like, universe, please just let me get this project out into the world. Just, if I'm going to get into an accident, not today, just let me get Skywatch out.
Man, I hope that happens. I really do. I mean, so many of us are rooting for that. And just knowing you as a person, like, gosh, we wish that for you, man. I totally do.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
it's been
so
a
we'll
great conversation.
Hey, thanks for doing this last minute, all that's in the weirdness coordinating this. So thank you for doing it.
Yeah,
really appreciate you.
It's an honor. And can't wait to listen to your other episodes.
Oh, appreciate that, man.
Thanks again to Colin Levy for his transparency and insight. Follow @Colin Levy on Instagram and Twitter. His website is colinlevy.com. If you're interested in leveling up your Blender skills and supporting what we do at CG Cookie, take a look at our extensive library of courses at cgcookie.com. And if you own a business or you work somewhere that's interested in onboarding Blender, visit orangeturbine.com. That's it for this episode of Denoise. I'm Kent Trammell. Thank you for listening.